Hi, I'm Megan Skidmore, and this is the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm a woman, daughter, sister, spouse, mother, life coach, and person of faith on a mission to normalize asking questions and allowing doubts, not only in a faith journey, but in all aspects of life. Join me in bringing this traditionally taboo topic out of the shadows of shame and into the light. I'm a firm believer that we normalize through more talking and engaging in discussion. More talking peels back, exposes, and erases the layers of shame associated with questions and doubts. When we're more authentic about our journey, we are more powerful because shame has no power in the face of authenticity. Today, Brother Tom Christofferson joins me on the podcast to discuss his experience identifying as a gay man and also a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Tom shares his journey of self-discovery and faith, of leaving the LDS Church and returning years later. He openly and candidly shares the challenges of reconciling his sexuality with his beliefs. Welcome to part 1 of the interview, episode 43. Welcome, everyone, to the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. I'm Megan Skidmore, your host, and I am thrilled today for our guest, Brother Tom Christofferson, to chat with me today and share more about his story and particularly his faith journey. We have lots that we're looking forward to diving into. And because Brother Christofferson has many areas where he has been interviewed or he has a book, we thought we would keep the introduction short so we can dive into some of the meatier, more fun issues. I guess we could say it. So with that, Tom, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Megan. I am Tom Christofferson, as you said. In my family, I'm the youngest of 5 sons, and I recognized that I was gay without the word to use it to describe it when I was about 5. And then in those awful junior high years, figured out what it was. And it was something that I, tried to avoid or change for another decade. But eventually, about age 25, I did finally come out and felt that I needed to explore what it meant in my life to be gay. I thought I had tried to be the best little Mormon boy I could be and needed to try something else. And so I, at that point, asked to be excommunicated from the church. And as I think about my faith journey, it wasn't necessarily a problem of faith that made me feel I needed to separate myself. It was that I didn't see a place for myself there. And I needed to explore, I felt, and discover the meaning in my life in other places. And it's something that that I hope lots of people do, to not treat this as an all or nothing event, but to say, hey, these are the good things I want to be sure I'm taking with me as I begin another phase, and what other good things can I add to it?
Yes, that's such an important point, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I appreciate you sharing that, and I feel like I want to mention that that's really all you felt your options were at the time, right?
Right.
And one of the reasons I started this podcast is to just normalize the sharing of stories, the sharing of our faith journeys in all of their messiness, in all of their discomfort and their beauty. There are no two alike. And, mine took a pivot when my kiddo, when we learned my youngest identified as LGBTQ+, and it's hard. Yeah. It's really hard. And I truly believe the more that we have these important conversations, the more healing it can be, the more we can connect with one another, and we can just normalize. We are all having very human experiences, and they're all good.
At the point that we were finalizing that first book, which is probably the one most people know, as that we may be one, I was having a conversation with one of the executives at the publisher, and she said, are you ready for this? Are you sure you want to go ahead knowing what kind of reactions you might get? And I said, I'm pretty sure I know what the reaction from my community will be. And I think I have a sense of what the LDS church community reaction might be, at least at one end of the spectrum. But they're more likely to call you than they are me. But the hesitation I felt was just the sense that when you publish it, it seems like the story's over. Like the journey has concluded, and here are all of the messages and experiences to share. And it is absolutely not the case. I feel like the journey continues today, to
Yes.
try and resolve or draw closer as someone who believes deeply in Jesus Christ and wants to become a more consistent disciple of his. It's a daily journey trying to figure out how to reconcile that with the realities of my life as a gay man, and all the other aspects of our lives that bring joy and challenges. So.
Yeah, although I have not published a book, I understand that feeling of knowing, anticipating after hitting that publish button, so to speak.
Right.
But it's healing, and I wouldn't change it, and I wouldn't go back. One thing that I really like to talk about in my interviews is, those of us who grow up in a faith community, we're taught certain things depending on whenever our families became maybe religious or observing religious practices. For some, it's from birth. For some, maybe a little bit later in life, right? But we are introduced to certain concepts, beliefs, teachings, and so on. And then there comes a point where those are called into question for you as an individual. And for everybody, that's going to be at a different point in life, and it'll be different teachings or concepts, or we could use a lot of words here: policy, doctrine, whatever you want to, whatever name you want to assign that. And there begins what I term for myself a pivot in my faith journey that has led to faith crisis. Has never resonated with me. That indicates to me anyway, something's gone wrong, where really for me, I have learned many, many things have gone right. So I view mine as a faith expansion. So I would love for you to share with us the moments in your life, and you choose whatever period, whatever age you might have been, where you realized you had a wrestle to engage in. And, that wrestle is, of course, not necessarily a physical one, but a spiritual, mental, emotional one, and what that was like, and how you came out on the other side, or maybe you're still coming out on the other side.
I think it is an unending journey.
I agree with that sentiment that you said earlier, by the way. Yes, very much so. I think if not, it would be the antithesis of progress, right? We're always moving forward.
Well, and I think certainty is the antithesis of faith.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in that sense, we can feel very at peace with some of the conclusions that we've reached in our faith journey, but it's still faith. And so anyway,
Absolutely.
I guess for me, I think a couple moments come to mind as being some of the more powerful experiences, but the two I'm thinking of both relate to periods of my life where I felt like I had really significant thorny decisions to make that affected other people as well, and where I felt like I think in both cases felt I'd kind of used up the resources I had available to me, and the issue or challenge or the decision was not going to go away. And in both of those cases, I think it just prayers become really simplified, at least for me. It's not a wordy, articulate presentation of thoughts, but for me anyway, the first time is just, do you even know I'm here? Do you know me? And the second time was, is this going to be my life? And in both of those moments, it was the plea really was, I can't do this alone, and I need to feel that I am not alone. And in both of those situations, the feeling of warmth and love and awareness that came to me were powerful and obviously deeply meaningful, because of that was, frankly, there was no place else to go for that kind of recognition and support. And so for me, when we use the descriptor, the comforter, for the Holy Spirit, to me, that's a literal description. There are moments in my life where the only comfort I felt I received was through that channel. And so, I mean, that's one aspect of a faith journey. I think to me, the most critical experience of life is who we become, or what the most critical metric of life, I guess, the better way to say that, is who we become. And the yardstick, I don't know, the way for me to try to feel like I know where I'm aiming is the measure of Christ. And so the most critical aspect for me is just to feel like I have some connection to him and awareness of him, and he likewise of me. And so that's the most critical element of my life, that I feel like I didn't choose to be gay, but I do choose to love Christ. And then we've got, I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so that adds other dimensions to it, of the history of the church, of the Book of Mormon, other policies and doctrines, as you said. And each brings kind of its own opportunity to discover and challenges and questions. And I guess for me, I don't really feel like ambiguity is a bad thing. I'm really sort of willing to live with some unanswered questions, and frankly, to live with the possibility that good and unhelpful exist at the same time in the same space. And so, in that sense, again, I really feel like one of the tenets of the religion that I follow is that intelligence, or the experiences of this life that help us to learn and grow, are essential and not to be avoided, and cannot be gained by watching necessarily someone else's journey, or by following someone else without ever learning for ourselves the things that are essential to know, and because that's how we change, that's how we become. I think about the metaphor of a broken heart, and the thought that's been expressed frequently, certainly not original to me, but the idea that it's the break that allows new things to occur. If we want our hearts to be changed, to be like his, then we have to allow them to, in a sense, shatter and be restored or recreated. And so it's not delightful all the time, right? And no one rushes toward pain as something that they want, but there is a sanctification process, I think, that can be had in our wrestle, even when our wrestle doesn't yield solid answers. That a willingness to continue to engage the desires of our hearts to yield to belief, or a desire to have faith, I think is, as essential in the process as maybe someone else's certainty.
That's really a monumental observation. The sanctification process that can be had in the wrestle. And I don't know, tell me what you think about this. I don't think that could occur without this pull from opposite poles, we could say. When you said good and unhelpful can exist at the same time and in the same space. Ambiguity isn't a bad thing, right? I don't know if that process could fully happen within us without this tension that is this that throws us onto the wrestling mat, we could say. Most of us don't go out looking for it because when we think we're certain, that feels pretty safe. That feels pretty comfortable. I don't know what your thoughts might be on that.
I agree with you. I think we're one of my favorite recent books is All Things New, from our friends Terrell and Fiona Gibbons.
Love it. Yes.
Among other reasons, because I think they love the description of Christ as Christ the healer as much as I do, and that we believe that we are part of a restoration as opposed to a reformation, and that so the language of restoration is not in all ways the same as reformation. So rather than focusing on sin, we focus on learning. Rather than focusing on punishment, we focus on healing. And that idea that the experience of learning, and I think of a phrase in a revelation to Joseph Smith, our founding prophet of my faith, that all these things shall give thee experience and shall be for thy good. I think that's true for all of us. There are lots of experiences we would not have chosen, but that can be for our good. And
I love that so much. Focus on sin, put our focus on learning versus sin, or on healing versus punishment. I think we forget sometimes that there are multiple options available to us to believe or to think. We tend to go towards the more catastrophic ones, the ones that evoke maybe more fear or more strong emotion, because we're, again, trying to keep ourselves safe in an emotional and a mental and a spiritual way. I want to go back to something that you mentioned when you were talking about in your younger years. You said that you had used up your resources, right, and then prayers became more simplified for you, even down to just simple, are you there? Is this really going to be my life? Can you share a little more about what you mean when you said, I used up my resources? If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and follow the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. Also, don't forget to enter my podcast giveaway, where the first prize is a $100 gift card. To do so, simply leave a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Upload a screenshot to my Google Doc. All the details and the link to enter, including the Google Doc, is in the show notes or in the bio of my Instagram profile.
Yeah, I guess the first one was in a period of my life, I had been married to a woman for a very short period of time, and that marriage was annulled. But as I was trying to work my way through that, or try to understand the impact not just on myself but on my partner, I didn't see any way that I could make everything work to the benefit of both of us. I couldn't. I guess I didn't feel like I had the resources to change myself in that fundamental way. And had really come to feel that God wasn't trying to change me either, that was, I could be useful exactly in the way that I was. I could be a person of worth in the world, attempting to follow the 2 great commandments in the reality of my life there. And but I couldn't find a way to move forward that I was sure would be a path of happiness for both of us, and would resolve some of the primary challenges. And that was the sense of just, there's nowhere else to go. Do you know I'm here? Like, help. And the second was some months after I had rejoined the church, after about 7 years of participating as a non-member of the church, a friend of the church, but not a member of it. And the 19-year relationship I had treasured with my then companion had then come to an end, and I was in a different place geographically, and then obviously in a very different place emotionally after that nearly 2 decades, and felt like the only prayer I could offer was, please don't let this be my life. Help me to find warmth and joy and peace and companionship and love, and in whatever shapes those will take. But at that night was just the dark night of the spirit, just that feeling that there was many people loved me. I knew many people cared and would want to do all they could to be helpful to me. But at the end of the day, I was alone. And the only place I could find to truly feel not alone was in that prayer.
I appreciate you being real. I think that's one area where the LGBTQ plus community really gets shortchanged. Is, I love what you said. in your prayer, you said, please don't let this be my life. I want companionship.
Yeah.
I want, support, people who I love in my life, and some of the other things that you said. And I was guilty of this. And I think it has to do with things that are passed down and not learning something for yourself from gaining firsthand experience. And that is, I think that LGBTQ plus folks get reduced to their sexuality versus the whole human experience, that
Right.
they're just like anybody who lives on this planet, whether you're hetero or otherwise. We're all spiritual beings. We're physical beings. We're mental and emotional and, yes, sexual beings. And we're creative. We're intellectual beings. I mean, there's just so much more depth there. And when I really figured that out and I learned that, it just kind of broke my heart that there's this misunderstanding. It's a gross misunderstanding, really. I was going to ask you if that was a hard question to pose, and you answered it. You said that was a dark night of the soul.
And again, I feel like I need to underline the point again that one experience like that doesn't solve it, for lack of a better term, right? It doesn't, I don't want to say, like, it doesn't mean that there's never a similar wrestle again. It just means, in what I want to say is my own experience in that particular hour of great need, I felt an enormous sense of awareness and love. There have been other dark nights of the soul, and some of them don't resolve immediately. Some of them I'm still wrestling with. But I guess for me, having had the experience of many times where I have felt that, then I kind of have the willingness to wait for the things that are where I'm not feeling it, where I'm still trying to take steps in the dark, and hoping and praying that I'm doing it in the right way.
You're saying when you receive that love, that strength in those moments, that kind of fills you somewhat enough to carry you a little bit further, but that it's not going to be the last time that you experience this dark night of the soul.
Exactly.
I feel that.
I remember one time I was speaking to a group, and a woman came up afterward and said, I must have heard you wrong, because you said that when you were with your partner of 19 years, that you had a very happy life. And she said, but you were sinning, so you couldn't have been happy. And I said, no, we were very happy. And I think that's another of the aspects you're talking about there, where we bring our limitations of understanding into these situations of someone else's life. And so often I think that we really need to let other people tell us what that feels like, what the experience is, rather than us telling them what their experience is. And so that I think the same thing here. Like I can share my experiences, but other people are going to have their own journeys, and will have their own ways of experiencing similar things. And my hope is, let me just say, I think my sense is that gods, our heavenly parents and Savior, are willing for us, in a sense, to choose our own path of learning, to pick your own university. And the tuition may vary, right? Some universities may be much more expensive than others. And I always choose the expensive one, I think. But all learning can be useful if we're willing, at those critical moments, to turn to them for correction and direction and healing. So my hope is always that however anybody feels is the best path for them to move forward, that it includes the divine, as opposed to feeling that because of what they've experienced thus far, if they close the door on a religious experience, they must also close the door on their personal spiritual experience. And to me, that's heartbreaking.
I really think that's an important distinction to make. All of those things that you just said, when our loved ones do step away, that could very well be exactly what their path needs. And just because they are taking a step away from, I interview folks from all faith backgrounds, so I try to be inclusive in my language. Just because they're stepping away from their faith of origin,
right,
doesn't mean that they are stepping away from God or
yes,
turning their back on God. And I would add, even if they are, I think God can handle it. I don't think that they're completely at a loss and there's no hope for them. Like you said, this is our heavenly parents have allowed us to choose our own university. And that means that our major, our minor of study, all of it, it's going to be so different. And there's different ways of arriving there.
right. I think the metaphors are abundant.
Yes.
For the notion that that we may turn our backs or we may move away, but the love of heavenly parents and Savior is never distant. I mean, it's up to us to decide if we're willing to accept it and turn toward it.
Mm-hmm. I've really learned how much our heavenly parents value growth and progress and learning,
right,
and how much this mortal existence really is just that. A recent guest of mine, PhD student Liz Thomas, she said, I think it's this great big giant social experiment. And that really resonated with me. We're learning from one another, with one another, together, and it's really beautiful. And this journey has helped me to shed a lot of preconceived ideas or paradigms, such as this us versus them mentality,
right,
or all in or all out type of mentality. A lot of things that I just don't, I don't subscribe to any longer.
I also think there's an element of time and place or stage of life with something's not useful to me at one stage of life may be very useful to me at another stage. And so I think it's patience with ourselves to say, why am I not more consistent, or what, why do I feel like I'm wandering to and fro? And part of that, I think, is that we're, I hope, always trying to build on what we've already gotten, what we've already learned, what we've already gained, who we've already become, to be able to move forward. And it's never, in my experience, a linear process. It involves wandering sometimes to be able to really gain perspective and to see from different places what it is that we're trying to, where it is we're trying to arrive.
Yeah, I think patience is so key. We are so, I think the discomfort can be great when you have questions come up, or when you realize you have some doubts. And for the purposes of my podcast, I define doubt as a noun, it's to be uncertain. As a verb, it's to purposely suspend judgment. And the more that I have dived deep into this concept, it's become way less scary. Actually, it's not scary at all. It's just a part of this whole process of learning, right? And it's actually deepened my relationship with God and my discipleship with Christ. And so I'm curious to ask you, how has your discipleship and your relationship with God evolved, or how has it helped you, changed you?
Yeah.
To allow questions and doubts, I mean.
I think early in the process of maturation, for lack of a better term, it's all me, right? Especially as I was trying to come to grips with what it meant to be gay. My experience was really self-focused and selfish, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. But I think that's a necessary first step to say, okay, I can resolve some portions of this, so now I have energy to devote outside myself. And often in talking to younger LGBTQ people, I always say, when you're really in the thick of it is actually a great moment to find someone else whose load you can share. Because in those moments when it seems just so big and so consuming, if you can take a little step away to engage in somebody else's wrestle or the burdens of their life, that step away can sometimes help resolve or clarify some of the things that you were just turning over and over and over and over. At least that's been my experience, and I hope it's useful to some others. But I don't have children, so I have 18 nieces and nephews, and they now have children of their own. So I think I have a perspective, at least, of how different individuals are within one family, and certainly how different cousins are in that just one step removed connection. And I think about that if we each learn in different ways. There are parents can be consistent in how they do things with every single one of their children, and yet it doesn't work, right? You've got to change the teaching style or method or approach based on the way that individual responds and how they can take things in. And so I think that's true of our whole society, right? If we could be a little more willing to allow other people to learn in the ways that are most effective for them, even as they're reaching conclusions we wholeheartedly disagree with. If we can suspend the need to force them or change them into what we want to see, I think we have an opportunity to really be a vibrant, diverse society. And I just, in the political world of the United States at the moment, it's really hard. And especially dear to my heart are my transgender brothers and sisters, my siblings in the transgender community. And I just, it is wounding to see people, in my mind, taking aim at the least of these, in the sense numerically, to make money off their distress, in a sense, to raise money and create divisions to try to gain power off the very unique individual challenges that occur there. And
Agreed.
So I feel like if we could say, look, I don't understand that. And I have had transgender friends for more than a decade, and I'm not sure I could fully understand the experience as deeply as they do individually. But if we could just say, I don't fully understand an experience, but I'm willing to let you tell me about it, or simply willing to trust that you're doing the best you can in the circumstances of your life, and ask you to give me that same level of trust. I think that's where we need to aim to be with so much of this, that we don't require other people to see or understand or act or believe exactly as we do, but we're willing to say, the process I'm going through is the same process you're going through, and we're approaching it in the ways that work best for us, and trying to come to happiness and health and peace, each in our own ways.
Thanks for listening to part 1 with Brother Christofferson. Make sure to subscribe and follow to not miss when part 2 publishes in episode 44. Also, I'm hosting a podcast giveaway. Simply leave a review on Apple Podcasts, screenshot it, and upload it to my Google Doc. After reviewing on Apple Podcast, for a bonus entry, leave a rating on Spotify. Share this giveaway with a friend. If your friend's name is drawn as winner, you both win a $100 gift card. The link to enter and to the Google Doc is in the show notes or in the bio of my Instagram profile. Come join me in Hopeful Spaces, a Dallas Hope Charities component of Hopeful Discussions, which is sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Financial Services USA. Hopeful Spaces is a monthly parent, caregiver, and ally support group facilitated by Megan Skidmore Coaching. To join is free. Simply send an email to chc@dallashopecharities.org. Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com, where you can find this podcast, as well as additional free resources. Check the podcast show notes on any platform for links to sources cited. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more, and to send me a DM. To help the podcast grow, please follow, rate, and review, as well as share it with a friend. Beyond the Shadow of Doubt is a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, which is a part of the Dialogue Journal found at dialoguejournal.com/podcast network. Founder Eugene England was a Mormon writer, teacher, and scholar who wrote, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue." My hope is that this podcast is an extension of that vision. Thanks for being here. Until next time.